So Neighborhoods drops September 2011. I caught them on the Neighborhoods tour, which was cool.
Excellent.
And then, so the next year starts going by. I believe at that point, Mark had moved to England or was staying in England. The story goes that Tom suddenly wanted to have an EP out by Christmas, and this was in like November. Walk us through how DED got put or thrown together. Were those songs ready for the next Blink album, or did this all just get thrown together in a couple weeks, or how'd that work?
I don't know if it was as short as a couple weeks, but it was certainly a moment of like, we want to do an EP. Maybe it's the first of a couple EPs. We want this out by Christmas. How do we do this? And at this point, you know, I'm in LA, Mark is in England, Travis is in LA, Tom is still in San Diego. However, his engineer had passed away. So I'm trying to figure out how does this work? So I ended up driving back and forth LA to San Diego, and I'd record Tom, sometimes sleep overnight, drive back to LA, record Travis. Mark flew in to do his stuff, record him, drive back to San Diego. So I was on the 405 like a monster, back and forth for that record. But the initial thing was it was going to be an EP, and those songs were made for the EP. It wasn't meant to be like these were just laying around. And at this point, to me, I felt like I had some equity as far as being able to suggest, you know, maybe a little bit more off the edge of like, you know, maybe Mark should sing on the chorus under you, Tom, or Tom maybe lay out and let Mark do this, or Travis change that beat, or let's have the drums. You know, to me, you know, if I'm thinking of like where was Blink going to go next, it was like sonically, could we do something like Boxcar Racer with that edge of like the roominess sound of the drums and the edge of the guitars, but have the electronic kind of elements in there, but also have tempo where the songs are all kind of living at a quicker tempo. Yeah. So to me, it was like, that seems like that would be cool. And this Dogs Eating Dogs felt like a step towards that. Yeah. So, you know, the drums, there was an effort to like make sure the drums have space, make sure, you know, if Neighborhood suffered from like a production standpoint, it was really, there's so much stuff going on that there's not a lot of space. And for me with Dogs Eating Dogs, it was like, let's make sure there's space for everything and make sure, you know, if there's 2 good parts, great. If there's 3 good parts, we should mute one, or like, let's give it some air. Mm-hmm. And I think it was more successful, I'd say, than, you know, not. Yeah. But yeah, it was a race. It was a race to finish. It was a race to start. It was a race to finish. It's a lot of miles on my car. And, you know, we barely made it in time. And yeah, I drove it down to mastering and then off it went. It was a very quick turnaround, and, you know, we all kind of produced it ourselves, and I think it's pretty cool. It's one of my more favorite kind of chunks of songs.
Yeah, I mean, I really love that EP. They still haven't released it physically. I'm still waiting for a vinyl or of some sort of that for that. Yeah, so I remember it got released with like a Christmas poster, kind of a Christmas bundle at the time, which was cool.
I'll go tell Mark to release it on vinyl. It's ridiculous.
I thought he tweeted like a month ago that he was working on it. Somebody asked about it. It's like, come on.
Good.
Obviously, one of the more controversial things from that EP is the Pretty Little Girl with Yellow Wolf. Now, some people, I thought it was great because at the time, and I don't know if people know this or not, but Travis and Yellow Wolf had done the Psycho White, which you were involved with, right?
Yes.
Boom. So I thought it made perfect sense. Being an EP, EPs are harmless. It's a little Christmas thing, you know, it's not that big of a deal. So a lot of people are curious about does a version without him exist? How close was that to being released? Any insight on that?
Does a version of it exist without him? I think a version does exist without him. I will say the most controversial of opinions, which is I think that song should have ended at the second chorus. Fuck the bridge, fuck the out chorus. Have it end. The end where he says we'll be here to do it again, and then the drums are like pop 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 pop. Done. It's like 2.5 minutes. So what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's a 2.5 minute song. Nobody cares. I'd say, especially now that I've listened to it a few times now, I'm like, why didn't we just, we could have just stopped it there. I think it was more like this EP is already going to be really short and like it needs to at least be 3.5 minutes, I guess. So like, how do we make that fill that spot? But to me now it's like, just cut it off right there. It's fine.
Yeah, people have made versions of it like on YouTube, I think, without Yellow Wolf. They go out of their way to...
I mean, if we're living in this world, to me it was like he wanted his friend to be on there and he did 16 bars or whatever, and cool. It's not, it wasn't a big to do to me. Now with time passed, I'm like, I think we just cut it off right there at the second chorus. You get the point by the second chorus.
Yeah. Were there any songs that didn't make that, or were those the ones and that you had to roll with?
Those were basically, and I'm trying to, I think I ran through some hard drives here. I don't think I saw anything. Hold on. No, there was a couple of riffs that Tom had. There was a track called, I think it was called Man Working that Tom had started, but it didn't actually turn into anything. But again, it was one of those things where like the decision to go for it and the decision for the release date were so short that it was like blast,
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of time for extra sessions or idea, like let's do 10 more ideas. It was like, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah. Were those sessions kind of similar in vibe to the Neighborhoods things? One of the things that Tom had came out at one point, and he said that he looked Travis and Mark in the eye and asked if they gave their best for that EP, and neither one of them answered. So, is there any truth to that?
He's so dramatic. Oh man, I don't know if they had that conversation. Tom is amazing at writing lyrics and writing parts. I will say, he's got a way that he's super talented at that. And he will, when I worked with him, he would write a ton. So I think the product of working apart, you don't always see everybody slaving over everything. And I know from his standpoint, with the volume of what he writes, I don't know that anybody else was matching the amount of stuff he was writing. But, I think everybody was on full, at their best to finish that and get it out. I wouldn't say anybody didn't do their part or anything like that.
Yeah.